Hey, hello, everybody. Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Leah Ralston, and it's time for another live stream, a live class. And in behalf of Faber-Castell USA, I would like to thank everybody for being here today. And happy Wednesday. Okay, guys, so today we are going to be having fun with some watercolors. We'll be painting some crystals, cluster of crystals. But before we get started, I just want to say hello to everybody. Angie, to answer your question, we do have the classes. I do apologize. I will have it up tonight. I was just trying to finish everything, but we do have classes lined up. So that's a promise. So that's every Wednesday. I'll have the schedule by this evening. So that's coming. All right, okay, guys. So since we are working with watercolor, let's talk a little bit about all the supplies we're going to need for today. Okay, so I have here, this is the 36 color of, I've had this for a very long time. This is the set of 36 of Faber-Castell. There's also a bigger set. I did link the this product in the comments. You can find that there if you're watching this on YouTube. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you guys are watching this on both, make sure to use the comment section so we can say hello to one another and, chit chat and build this wonderful community. Okay, so I have the watercolors. We're going to be painting a cluster of amethyst crystals. So we'll be working with the some violet, magenta, maybe some indigo, even like a dark blue. We'll have some fun with that. And then, of course, since we're working with watercolors, we are going to need some brushes. I'll be working with round brushes. It's my favorite brushes. Round brushes is just so much easier to use. I feel like it's so versatile. So I just have a couple of different sizes. I mean, I have a number two, just depending on how big you want your crystal to be today. So, I don't know how big you want your crystals. But basically I have the number two and the number five. All right. Hi, Lisa, you are here. Hello. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that I want to pull out my comment in here so I don't miss any of your comments. Okay, here we go. Yay! It is late day. Yay! Okay, and so I'm also, because it's a special day, I'm gonna use some of my Arches watercolor paper. This is a 300 grams, 140 pounds, cold press. This is 100% cotton, pure cotton paper. It's truly just one of the best papers out there when it comes to watercolor. So I'll be like, you know what? It's a special day. We're gonna pull one out today. So that's what I'll be working with. And of course, we need some paper. We need some, not paper. I already talked about paper. We need a place where we can blend some colors. And then also water. I have, this my favorite well, one for cleaning the brush and then one for like thoroughly cleaning it. Or sometimes you will need some water in there, especially when we're doing like the wet on wet technique. And then because we're working with water, we're going to need some paper towel. Paper towels is really something like a must if you're going to work with water because, this is your eraser right here. For some reason, you may have just kind of like picked up a little bit more water than you would like. This is our savior right there. Okay, here we go. We're gonna move the camera. Yes, the best, Lisa. It is. It truly is. All right, so first we're going to be creating our sketches. Let me see over here. Let me just work this one. All right, so let's work on the sketch. I did mention pencil and eraser. You guys know that. It's like an automatic thing for me. I gotta have my pencil and eraser. Sometimes I like to use my Polymatic. I love it. This one is a darker one. It's a 0.7. And so it has a bit more thicker lead, so it has a bit of darker lead, but I want to sketch really light, and my favorite one is the Jumbo pencil from Faber-Castell as well. So this is the regular HB pencil. It's just thicker and, like this, just because I really like it like this one. It's just easier to hold and to grasp. Plus my carpal tunnel, thank these pencils. All right, here we go. Let me see, let me see. Oh, all right. Where am I now? La la la. What are we doing? All right. Here we go. So, when we talk about cluster of crystals, you don't get overwhelmed. I know I do. I feel like when I say that in the beginning of every class, when I feel like, okay, guys, don't get overwhelmed. I feel like it's more for me than for you. I honestly feel like that's it. Okay, for the step one, like what I said, we're gonna start with our foundation or the, basic shapes of our crystals. And like what I said, we're gonna create like a cluster of crystals. So I create like a digital thing in here so I can just kind of like have it in my head. I did the digital sketching already. Sometimes it's like you get overwhelmed with everything that's happening. That's like, okay, sometimes I just like, okay, Lay, just calm down. Here it is. You don't have to be worry about that. Now, the cluster of crystals, think of it as like crystals are like natural, it's like basic geometry, right? I believe I was absent during the class when they taught this at class. But okay, we're going to start with like long rectangles. That's really how we're going to start first. And then we're going to make a point. So rectangles, long rectangles, and then we're going to create triangles, almost just like the tip of the triangles. So basically, crystals are like they often grow in clusters. I don't know about you. I have a couple of crystals here in my office. I really love just the look of it. And then I also believe in energy. So I love the amethyst because it opens your, kind of like your third eye, your intuition, your creativity. And then yeah, I really love it. Aside from it looking so pretty, you don't have to believe in the, kind of like healing energies, but crystals it's been around before us. So it's like I believe that everything in this world is like energy, everything. You have an energy, I have an energy, the crystals have energy, the trees have energy, the nature, it's like God created it for us to be connected to one another. So that's just me, it's just my personal opinion. I just truly believe in that. Okay. And so all right, so remember that when we think about crystal, we're gonna go, this is crystals are like we want to make it a little bit irregular. We don't want to make it too perfect because sometimes when we see them in drawings, they often look a little bit more perfect, like more precise. So we don't want to do any of that. We just want to be more natural, especially because crystals are like nature's geometry, right? So they're like the perfect geometry. Okay, so we're like what I said, we're going to start with rectangles. And that's what we're going to do. How about we start with a center point? If you want to have your center point straight up like this, you can do that, but I don't think it's going to look so good. And I think I'm going to use my paper also in a horizontal form like this instead of like a portrait. I want it more to be like a wider crystal. We don't have to do the lettering. I just did the lettering in our sample class just because I had a little bit of space. But this time I really want the crystal to be the up and center. So this is the star of the show is our crystal. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my center crystal, but instead of like straight up, I'm going to make it where it's leaning a little bit to my right. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line and I'm going to sketch really light. Okay, so one line, second one, right? So we'll start with just rectangles. And let me zoom in. And I did the zoom in correctly this time. Look at me. Look at me go. But I don't think I can. There you go. Here we go. Oh, Lisa, I love you. You know that. Okay, so we have one, and like what I said, we're gonna make the tip of our triangle. Now we don't have to make it like complete triangle. Almost even my point is like leaning a little bit to the right like that. You can make it short. I'm gonna show you. You don't have to make it super. Oh, I'm gonna try not to erase so much because I don't want to ruin my paper because this is our good paper, guys. Kind of like that, So this is what I was talking about when wanting to make it look so perfect. Okay, now this time I'm going to draw one almost like behind it. So I'm going to start with a rectangle. And this time I'm going to make this one a little pointier from the top. And it goes a little wider at the bottom. So it's not so symmetrical. And Again, I'm going to do my triangle just like this. And then later on, we're going to create like facets, you know, just a little bit of like hexagons in there. I'll show you in a little bit. Okay, I'll add one over here, little smaller one. And again, everything is like, this one I'm going to make it a little more like a perfect triangle top. And then we can make one there in the center later if we want to. But I'm going to make one here and I'm going to overlap this a little bit. Right, just like that. I'm going to create like a rectangle. And this time I'm going to make it where this, just like that. And then we can create one smaller one in here if we want to. I want to make it look like there's, you know, maybe one here in the center. So I'm just going to overlap it. And we're going to erase later. Going to make this one angled, angle line, a little short, and then just do that. Okay. Maybe I'm missing a little bit. Maybe I made this one a little too long. I'm just going to adjust it just a little bit. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser because this one's better. So it will not hurt the surface of my paper. And I'm going to make this one angled a little also. Okay, just like that. Oops. You guys know me and my adjustments, right? Do it like that. Okay. Should I make something small in here also? Maybe so. Maybe this one I'm going to make it really leaning there to the left. Okay. Then our triangle, top of the triangle, just like that. I feel like I made one. I made it too small, but it's okay. Now I'm just going to adjust. You know, guys, when you use your Arches paper and you feel like you're going to erase a whole lot, it's probably best to sketch in a copy paper first and then transfer it in your watercolor paper. It's always it's always the best thing to do. Don't be like me. I am doing all my sketching and all my erasing. Oh, this paper. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm just erasing parts of the crystals that I want to be in the background. And then I want the small ones to be in the foreground. So I'm just erasing parts of the big one right there. And I'm going really light so we don't ruin our paper. Right, okay. Now this time, it's almost like this one is going to be like connecting the dots. It promise, it really is. So we'll start with the big one. You probably can't see it so well just because it's so small. Is this better? I feel like this one's going to be better. All right. Okay, so we're going to create the facets. And the reason why we're going to do this is because this is how we are going to decide where, you know, the highlights, parts of the amethyst that's going to be lighter and parts of it that's going to be a little darker. And that's why we're going to work with, you know, violets, purples, and maybe parts, a little bit of dark blue and all that for the shadow. I honestly feel like I made this one too small. What are we thinking, Lay? But okay. All right, whatever. So now from that tip of our pyramid, triangle, whatever you want to call it, we're going to create lines that goes down like this. Okay, one like that. I'm going to make one like this, right? So I am just almost like connecting the dots from here to this corner, going down. I'm going to do that. This one, I'm going to make it there to connect it there. And this one is going to go up, right? And so I'm going to bring this from here. We're going to go bring this down now. just like that. All right, next one, same thing. We're gonna do that. Maybe this one, I'm gonna make this one a little longer. I'm gonna connect it, and then go up, and then bring it all the way down with your light. After this, we're going to decide where our light source is going to be. I feel like I want the light source a little bit to the left, maybe the top left. Just going to fix my line also, going down, down, right? Now we're going to connect that corner to this corner, to here, and going up. We're going to go bring it all the way down. And we're going to do the same thing to all of the crystals. Down, down. Okay. Line, line, connect, 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 line, and then line. I have one more. One, two, like that. So we're going to create reflections, of the light bouncing from it. So that's why we're going to create a bit of highlights, and we're going to create shadows or contrast in here. Okay, so remember when we're working with watercolors, we're working from light to dark, and watercolors cannot be lightened with white watercolor. When we want something light, it means we just need to use a little bit more water, right? So if we want to use the darker value of this color, it means we just need more pigment instead of water. So it's just all about the ratio of water that you're going to use with your watercolors to create your light and the dark value. And again, when it comes to watercolor, we want to work from light to dark, right? So I feel like I want to lighten my sketch just a little bit. Okay. Just going through it just one time. You probably can't see it anymore. Okay, so I want our light source to be from here. So I'm just gonna sketch a little bit of that sun in there lightly so we can see our light source. Hello, light source, right there. And then what you can do is that if you're having a hard time seeing your sketch, what you can do right now is maybe use a, I don't know, maybe like a pink colored pencil, or maybe like a purple colored pencil. I feel like that's a good line work. If you don't want to use like, let me see, I'm grabbing some. If you don't want to use like a fine liner, maybe like, the polychromos is the best one to use, as long as you use the oil base and don't use any water soluble pencils, right? Even if you use the wax pencil, as long as it's not water soluble. So with the Gold Faber, don't use the Albrecht Dürer pencils, because that one will mix with water unless you want to intentionally mix with water. If you want it to blend with water later on and you really just want to see the sketch initial sketch, but want to see it without having some pencil marks later on, then the water soluble colored pencils is the best one to use. But if you want your sketch to stand out and you really want this to be the line work of your illustration, then use a not water-soluble pencil, like the Polychromos pencils. These are good ones. You may use the Gold Faber pencils. Those are really good ones too. Even the Black Edition pencils will work, all right? So noted, got it, got it. Okay, so I feel like I want to sketch with the Polychromos so that you can also see a little bit of the sketch, and I don't mind it will stand out later on, but I'm gonna sketch really, really lightly also. And I'm not gonna sketch perfectly, so I'm gonna use it, hold my pencil a little bit to the middle, right? And so we can sketch like that, and not going to be a perfect sketch either. So I want it to be more of very sketchy. So I want my sketch to be sketchy, but you really, really that's it. I want my sketch to be sketchy. So I'm just going to go really light and allow a little bit of that jagged lines. And I am applying probably medium pressure while doing this, you know, do the line. So on a scale of 1 to 5, my pressure would be probably, I said middle, so probably 2.5. So very light. This color is Crimson 154, just in case you're wondering. Again, you don't have to do this. We can go straight to, well, you can go straight to watercolors if you would like, but me personally, I want to have a little bit of line art, just a little bit, just so I can have a little bit more structure. Okay, do this. Line. And then also we're going to use a lot of watercolors anyways later on. So parts of it are really going to be underneath all that watercolors, the pigments. This is a beautiful color, crimson color. We have a lot of fun fall classes lined up. You know, artists, I'm trying to catch up on some deadlines, and then I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, I thought I mentally uploaded our classes already because I had 2 ready, but I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to finish all 5 because for next week we have one, and then we have 4 Wednesdays for the month of September. All right. Here we go. And I'm also really, you can connect this one kind of like this, connect it to that, if you want. So you kind of just like connecting it. But again, we're working in like a geometrical shape. So I'm kind of like extending angled, right? So angled in here, straight there, and then angled again. This one I can just make it straight. I'm going to angle this one a little bit. I'm going to go straight and then angle that. So just in case you want to close in your bottom part. All right, here we go. I'm going to move my water. Maybe I'll move it over here to my right. We'll see. I might adjust it again later. So, okay, to wake up our pigments, what do? We drop some water in there. So I'm just going to prepare my palette. My palette is so messy, guys. It's not even funny. Look at this. Because I tried cleaning it once, and honestly, it just got dirty again. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? Like, why are we doing this? Just use it like that. So I'm gonna just kind of like see if I need some blues later on. But I have like magenta, I have the red violet. I don't know the exact name, but you have it. I have it in the box, but I don't have it on top of my head right now. Right, let that sit there for a little bit. Now we're going to do wet on wet technique, but we want to work in layers, okay? So we want to work in layers, but I do encourage you to have some bleeding, of other colors in here, but at the same time, we don't want to work the paper too much. So I'm going to work on my left first, color in all the left, maybe until the middle small crystal in here. Then I'll work on the right side. So I'm just going to wet all this part first. I'm just going to go in there and just wet it. Especially for the initial or underneath layer, our first layer of color. we're going to work in very light colors because remember, we can build up our color, the intensity later on. And then if you have any heat tool or a blow dryer, it will speed up the process. Okay, I feel like it's already soaked in there. Now I'm going to go prepare my colors. I'm going to start with the magenta and I want it to be really, really light. So let me see. So I'm going to pick up, let me show you how much I'm actually picking up so you guys can see. And you're going to see this palette right here. So just that, right? But then I'm going to add water in here because I really want like a very, very light value. So that's the ratio of the pigment and water in there. All right. So we're going to load up our brush, pick up some of that. And then we want to intentionally leave parts of it, especially the top part of this one. Think of it, this is our light source. You probably can't see my little sun. I have a little sun in there. So we want to leave parts of it. This one, this will be the highlights of that. So we want to be careful. So I'm going to start with just kind of like leaving, dropping some of the pigments. And we want to go really light, just let it play in there. And I'm intentionally leaving parts of it like just the paper alone. So we have our natural highlights. This one, this will be where the sun is hitting or our light is hitting it. So I'm just going to go like that. And then we're going to do, hi, Jamie, you made it. Yay. Okay, so we're going to leave parts of this one as well because that's where our light is coming from. So we're going to leave that really light. And this one would be casting a little bit of shadow on the top of her small crystal, you know, so probably the light would be bouncing here. But remember how light works in nature. It bounces everywhere. And that's why when you're working with watercolors, it's important to just kind of like think of it how the lights are bouncing. And that's why when we use colors, we almost use all of it in the whole illustration that we're working on. So that's how it is. Now I'm just going to clean my brush and then I'm going to go work on this side. I'm just going to apply water. So we're just going to soak our paper with some water. And it's okay if some parts of the colors would bleed into the other page. I mean, onto the other crystal, not page. Where did I get page in my head? Man, when you're like perimenopause or like things just come in your head, like you don't really mean it. Like, I bet you people like, Jason and I were talking about this, like people will actually get in trouble, you know, because when they say, why did you say that? Because I said something, you know, why would you say something like that? I, I didn't mean it. That's not what I meant. I promise you, that's the daily situation in our lives right now. Being perimenopause. It's like that's not what I meant. You know what I mean. So my youngest daughter, Rain, she's like, I know what you mean. Thank you, sweetheart. It's insane. All right. So here I'm just putting all the highlights in there. And again, intentionally leaving parts of the paper white and like that. But remember, this is our lightest color still. So we're still going to have like dark in here. So we're just in our first layer, but it's so pretty already. Yes, I love watercolors. Like you, Jamie, I really find it forgiving also. What's the one thing, I feel like the one thing that I found difficult in the very beginning when it comes to watercolors is just understanding the ratio of how much, you know, pigment to water and how much water to the pigment, you know. But when you practice a whole lot, when you work with watercolors a whole lot, then it gets easier because you understand. And also depends, it just really depends on the product as well, because some products, it's like a little bit goes a long, long way. So just be careful. All right. I am just drying my paper, but not completely. So we just want to dry it just a little bit. That's enough. We don't want it to be too dry. We still want a little bit of moisture in there when we start working on our next color. Great. I'm going to go clean this up because why not? We're going to work on another value. And this time I'm going to use my smaller brush. And I'm going to go pick up parts of this one first. Then we're going to use violet later. Ooh, see? That one is a whole lot of pigment. But we're going to create a little bit more contrast. So we want some pigment, but this is a little bit too much for me. And that's why, I get this question a lot. Hi, Lay, why do you like working with the watercolors, watercolor markers like the Albrecht Dürer? Because I have this tendency. I do this most of the time. I tend to pick up a whole lot more pigment than I want, so it's crazy. Hi, Carrie. Hello, hello. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so this is a little too much pigment, so I'm gonna go put my water in here, and then I'm gonna go pick up a little bit of pigment at a time, right? So we're gonna go pick up a little bit of that, just a little bit. And then if we need a little bit more color and intensity, then we can definitely, you know, create a different blend, just pick up a little bit more pigment at a time. All right, now we want to establish our shadow or the contrast in here. So we want to create that dark area. I definitely want to start here on this. You know what? I feel like the number 2 is a little too small. So I'm just going to go back in with my 5. Or if you have a 4, probably the 4 is better. And then I'm just going to add water in there because this brush is already dry. So we're just going to put it over there, bring it up. I don't want any harsh lines yet because we want to establish that later on, but we want to slowly build our contrast. I'm going to dip the tip of the brush in the water and then dipping. I'm going to grab my paper towel just so I don't have a whole lot of water in the brush. Just going to clean up that edge. We're going to like that. See, that's just a little too much pigment for me, girl. And then another one. Yeah, a little goes a long way. A little. All right, so I have applied my pigments in there. Now I'm going to clean my brush, dab it to my paper towel, and then we're going to clean up the edges. Just like that. Bring it up. So we're like almost like this is your airbrush in the skin, like blurring it. Okay, picking up more pigments over here, like this. Moments like this, I miss Arkansas because I have this beautiful crystal shop over there. So I miss that. I found one here in Houston, but so far. It's close to downtown Houston. It's so traffic when you go to downtown Houston. Look how vibrant that is. That's crazy. And we're still diluting this with a lot of water. So I'm just applying the pigments. Same process, dipping the brush in the water, dabbing it in my paper towel. And then I need more. Bring it up. Bring it up. Maybe a little bit here going down. Like that. I'm going to go on this side. See how I'm like working in different layers? Because I don't want to overwork the paper. Dip, dab. Wow, that's like a rap. Dib, dab, dibbity dab. Sorry, guys. Don't mind me. Okay, I'm gonna. I'm like, why am I turning into my husband when I'm doing this live classes? It's like, come on. That's the highlight. I'm gonna go establish the contrast here. Here, I want to repeat the dib, dab, dibbity dab. I feel like I actually sounds good. I can make it into my jingle. Next time we have like an intro music. You know, next week you might be hearing that as a jingle. Okay, now we're gonna go slowly work on different facets. I want to have a little bit more contrast in here. This is probably where the number 2 would be good, but it's okay still. The number 5 is still okay. We're just gonna work slow. And again, same thing, picking up the pigments and then blurring it out with water. Ah, that would be really fun. I would so love that because I am such a dork and I love kids. I really, really do. I'm like a little kid at heart anyway, so that would be like super duper fun. See, we're slowly building a little bit of contrast in there already. Okay, I'm gonna do that here. Now, the reason why I'm not using the number 2 brush is because I still want a whole lot of water. Not a whole lot, but I still want, water. And so the number 5 holds water. You just have to be really gentle when you're like trying to go create a bit more details. Like, because I made this one so slow. Don't ask me why I made it so slow. See the word slow? I didn't mean that slow. I mean small. That's what I meant. I didn't mean to make it too small, but I made it a little too small for my liking. Okay, so as you can see, now I'm like making another batch. So we're just picking up more pigments in there and a little bit more water, right? So dab, 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 dab there. We're going to create the contrast over here too in the different facets of the crystals and then clean it again and then clean water again, just like that. And then we're going to do it a bit here as well. And this side. I have a little bit more pigments left in my brush. Clean that. Like that. Okay. And then I'm going to go clean that up as well. Pick more. And then we'll add more here. Remember, watercolors, they look so vibrant, especially when they're wet. So don't be afraid if you feel like, oh my gosh, I added too much color in here or too much pigment in here, too much value in there. Give it some time to dry because they always, lose their vibrancy once they start drying. And so that's why we work in layers when we're working with watercolors. It's just patience. Plus, if I'm not like talking to you guys, like what I'm doing right now, it's super relaxing, super duper, super duper relaxing. So I really don't mind working in layers. Sometimes I get impatient, and that's why I like to work with markers as well, because, with markers, especially depending on the paper and on the marker that you're using, they really dry faster. So, but there's something about the way the pigments blend with water. There's just something so magical about it. Kind of like these crystals that we're working with today or we're painting today. It's like magical, especially the way that the water moves, the pigment moves with the water into your paper. It's the best. Really is. All right. I still have my natural highlights that we've created earlier. I don't know if it's a little too white for me, especially this area right here. So I am going to add a little bit more water to this and then just pick up just a little bit. See how much? Actually just a little bit. Look at that. just that much. So I'm just going to add some colors to this because it feels like a little too white. It's just a little too much highlight in there. So I want to add that. All right, so here, I'm going to create, this is probably going to be the darkest area of the crystal because this one is casting a shadow. This one would be casting a shadow. If you feel like you have a pool of pigments in there or pool of water, remember that your paper towel, that is what it is for. If you feel like, oh, I didn't mean to add, colors in there while it's still wet, just apply while it's still wet, you can dab it, or if it's, a little bit dry already, just dab more water in there and then just kind of like pick it up, right? Because this is your eraser right here. Okay, I feel like we're good. I'm gonna go switch to the number 2. I feel like I want to add a bit more here. So we're gonna go use all those pigments. Come over here, pigments. This one I need to dip. I need to dip more in the water because it doesn't hold as much water as a number 5 round brush. So to blend it, we really just gotta go do like dip, double dip, triple dip, 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 dip. Okay. Maybe I should add a little bit more color in here too, because I feel like it's just a little too white, even though that would be the lightest area, but still, I feel like it's too light in there. Right. Good, 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 good. Okay, now we're gonna go dry this just a little bit. Yes, patience. Truly, truly, truly is. Patience is what watercolor taught me also. Hold on. I'm trying not to get so close, because I still want a bit of moisture in there, but I just don't want like a pool of water. Right, so far, it's looking so good. Right now, we're gonna go use a deeper color. So we're gonna go pick this one up. Oh, that's a whole lot of pigments again. Ah, I just have heavy hands. Who among you guys have heavy hands and do this? That's why I ruin the pan, because I feel like I'm just jabbing the brush in there. You're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But only when with watercolors, I feel like I don't do this with everything else, makeup or anything like that. But just paint tubes, watercolor tubes, those. All right, so I'm using the number 5, and then now we're really going to establish this dark in here. I'm going to not try and aim for perfection in here, so I'm just apply it, especially where the two crystals are connecting. So we really want the colors in there. Ah, look how lovely this is. Then we're going to add water again, because right now I'm still trying to avoid any harsh lines like that. I'm glad I'm not the only one, Jamie. Thank you. So I do this all the time. See how I'm just kind of like dabbing the wet brush on top of that, and it's, slowly erasing, or just kind of like really lightening that area. All right. So put some water in there again. Dab in there. Right. And then grab more. Yeah, there's something about that working in layers with watercolors that really is so relaxing, but can also be frustrating, may I add, just depending on the paper that you're using. So good paper will really change your watercolor game. I didn't know this in the beginning, so but using a good paper will really change the watercolor game for you. Because I feel like, if I'm doing this in another brand, I probably would have a little bit of staining issues where the pigments are not going to travel as well as I would like them to travel in the paper. So a good paper is a must. But, of course, the price is really pricey. So, I mean, just put that in consideration. But also, if you really want to kind of like grow in your watercolor game, then I feel like you deserve the good paper also. I always say that because sometimes, I've bought like an Arches before and I feel like I'm gonna use it when I have like this really good painting in my head. But oftentimes it never comes. So you should treat every painting as a really good painting, but maybe instead of like working on a whole page like this, maybe just kind of like work in smaller pieces first, just while you're still practicing. So maybe that's something to just kind of like consider. Now I'm going to add a little bit more water in here, a little bit more like that. Yeah, oh, is it really nice? I think it's just, because the watercolor, the Faber-Castell is a little very pigment, I think it's on the pigmented side. So that is why I'm really careful with the amount of water that I'm using. Because this is not an artist grade, it's more like a student grade watercolor, so it's not super expensive. So sometimes that's why it's really important to understand your supplies. For example, I know if I'm working with kind of like another watercolor, maybe another brand, then it really works different than the others. Does that make sense? So maybe like a Daniel Smith, it's a really good one. I know that that's going to work different because that's very translucent. And I know that some watercolors, some colors of the Daniel Smith are like granulating. So just use your supplies and really play around and see how much you can learn while you're playing with it, while you're using it. That's the only way, and you just need to make mistakes. And honestly, that's the key. We always talk about that, when we do our classes, and we just always just talk about how you just need to make mistakes and really learn from that. It's like, oh, I feel like I used too much colors in here. I feel like I used too much water in here, so on and so forth. But allow yourself to play and allow yourself to make mistakes. So to make better choices next time around. All right, I'm gonna go add a bit more water in here. And then we have our last crystal. That one is really wet. Just gonna add right there. So did you notice that I was working in layers, but also working in different facets of our crystal? So just working it slowly. I feel like I'm doing a little bit too much more details in here, being too careful, but at the same time, it's okay. I feel like I'm okay with that. I feel like I'm working this too much. I would probably have been better if I was a little looser, but we're okay. Oh, this is so beautiful. Now, while this is still wet, I'm gonna go grab a little bit of like, I'm gonna guess this is probably Indanthrene blue. I don't have the colors in my head. I'm gonna try this one. Okay, this is what we want. We want a darker blue like this, right? More of an indigo. So I'm gonna go clean my brush, pick up some water, dilute that with water, like that. So while it's still wet, I'm just going to drop in, you know, like parts of that blue. This one is still really wet. This area right here is already drying up. So we're going to go help it by just adding water. Dab. I'm going to wet my brush. We just want it wet, not completely, just slightly wet. And then this one, how I'm doing that also is giving me some textures. I can see parts of it where like I'm moving the brush and it's leaving a little bit of mark in there. And so that's like a nice added texture. I need a little bit more here at the bottom. Like that. Now I want to use the same blue and create like florals on the sides. I feel like I'm going to have to display this one because it's so pretty. And again, once this dry, remember we're going to lose a little bit of that vibrancy of the colors, right? Because right now it's still wet, so it's really vibrant. I'm not dipping anything in here. I just using whatever I have left in my brush. I have a little bit of pigment in there, and I'm just kind of like coloring with whatever that is. Ah, that's so pretty. I love that pretty. It's so pretty. Okay. And what you can do is kind of like create like a pool of water in here and then add some colors if you want, a little bit of that reflection or shadows. So I'm just going to apply water. Nothing but water right now, right? I'm going to go use the same blue. Yep. I'm really going to wet it and just drop in the colors and let it travel across the page where you've applied that water. I just love wet on wet technique. I just look at this. I just love that natural movement of the pigments when it's traveling in the water. That's so gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful. Just gonna go add a little bit more water in here because I'm gonna add another color. Just be careful doing that because I've lifted some of that color. So just be mindful. Don't copy me. So we're just gonna add a bit more of that purple in here. Like that. So depending on how much colors you want, you can just add a little bit more layer at a time. Okay, so now that I'm adding, when I add a bit more water in here, I'm going to drop it here where I've actually laid down the colors, right? So it will just bloom and travel again because this paper is just absolutely awesome. God, this paper is magic. I'm just going to leave it just like that. You probably cannot see like the whole effect because of the glare of that, but look how much is that traveling. You can actually help it, assist it, or I say assist it, and kind of like tilt your paper like that if you want to. Look how much contrast we have. Now it depends on if you want to add a little bit more to this, if you want to add a bit more purple to that, feel free to do so. I'm going to use the same purple color and I just want to add some flowers everywhere. So I'm just going to go grab Then we're almost done. You can add some lettering in this if you want to just kind of like complete it. But I want to add some roses. So remember how we do a roses? We use C strokes, right? So C stroke, start from the very middle of the flower. So you want to start with a small C stroke, like, right? So use your brush just like that. And then we're going to do the opposite. Now again, just kind of like what we did with the crystal, we want to be intentional with our highlights in between of your petals. The separation will create like a separation of the petals right there, right? I want to add some water. I want to go lighter as I'm moving outwards. I want it to be really just very loosely. So just water still. And I'm creating larger, much larger C strokes, right? And then I'm going to go do the same on the other side, picking up some of that pigments. C stroke. Let the brush do its thing. So don't be afraid to just really bend your brush, you know, and then let it just kind of like almost to the very end, let it flick, but in a controlled manner. Just don't let it, then just don't let go, like flick it up like that. No, still in a very controlled manner, but you know, apply pressure and then slowly lift it. It's kind of like bend and snap. Snap and bend, bend and snap. I think it's bend and snap, but kind of like that. So you just let it bend and then let the brush snap on its way up just a little bit, slowly, slowly, slowly. So when you do that, it creates that tapered stroke. See? I'm going to go over here. Again, we're bending it, we're bending it, we're bending it. Now we're gonna slowly lift it just like that and let that tip flicker and taper, right? So now I'm gonna go add my water. Just really blur that part of my flower. Like that. Now it's looking a little flat, so I want to add a bit more contrast, especially in the middle part. Look how much contrast we have in here. So I'm just going to go in the middle part again and then drop in some colors, you know, while it's still slightly wet, so we can create some contrast in there. And I'll do the same thing here, because look at this, it's still wet because that paper, yes, that paper is amazing. So while this is still wet, I'm also creating like tiny strokes to create like a stylized look of the petals. And I'll do the same thing here. While it's still wet, we're just going to go round in there. All right. Now I want to create the blue a little bit to the bottom, and we're almost done. We're just going to finish this up so we can just have a little bit of different color. And for the leaves, if you want to add like some leaves in here, you can use like a gray or maybe the magenta color, just so you can stay in that color palette. So look how small this one, I'm going to make it. So I'm just adding small petals like that. I'll do the same thing, a really short, very small C stroke in there. Then we're going to add some water in here. Add. Now, the only thing that I'm seeing people are doing with their roses when they're trying to do like a loose um, painting of roses is that you guys don't leave a little highlight in between because we need that spacing in between because that's what's going to give us that visual of the separation of the petals. So just be careful with that. I know I did the same thing before. You know, when I was first getting started, is that I'm not leaving enough space in between. I'm not letting the petals breathe, you know, in between them. And then I'm not leaving enough white space to create that natural highlights as well. So this time I'm just using whatever pigment I have in that applied earlier and just using it to create like a very loose parts of our petals. I'm going to do the same thing in here. Like that. I'm going to use just a little bit to create like small purple just to fill the shape or the space in here. I hope you guys enjoyed this class today. And again, like what I said, I already have finished the rest of the classes. I promise I will have it up tonight. I just need to work on the class description and then need to find the links for the products, but you know, it's almost ready in there. So that's going to go up. So I am going to list the products that we'll be using because we're going to be definitely switching to a fall palette. So we're going to play with some acrylics. We're going to play with sketch markers, Gold Faber Aqua, water soluble markers, you know, so that's what we have coming up. And that's going to be super exciting. We have colored pencils. And what else? We have acrylic painting, you know, a really stylized, very childlike painting for acrylics. I'm super excited about that one. So I'm just putting some of the magenta. If you have like a gray color as well, that might actually work. You know what? Why not? I feel like I have a black. I don't have a gray. So how do we create gray? A little bit of black and a whole lot of water, right? A little bit of black and a whole lot of water. There we go. I feel like this one's going to be better for my leaves. Just adding a little bit of that. Yep, just a little bit here and there. Notice how my leaves are. They don't even look like leaves. I'm just really making marks. You know, we're just making the impression of like leaves in here. And I'm just bending the brush to create those marks. I'm letting that brush work for me. And that was a good call. Not use the magenta, but making our own gray. It's like a cool gray in here. I love it. All right, guys. I mean, this is it. If you have any questions, you may do so now or forever hold your peace. I feel like I want to adjust a little bit of that blue in there, maybe blur it out a bit more, but I'm going to work on that later and maybe add a little bit more contrast. But as you can see, we've, you know, worked in layers in here. We have established our light values, you know, so we have our lightest and our darkest. We created contrast and all that. And then we added a little bit more visual interest by adding a little bit more flowers, but sticking with the color palette, which, you know, even though it's a little bit busy, I think I'm going to add a little bit of quote in here using my markers later on in this part especially. But, you know, sticking to the color palette makes it look like a bit more flowy instead of like super busy because there's a whole lot of colors. So stick with the color palette, even though, you know, there's a really gray leaves? No, it's probably dead. But it looks beautiful. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much. I promise we'll have the rest of our classes, the one for next week and also for the month of September. So that's really going to be fun. If you need to get a hold of me, you know where to find me. I am on social media everywhere. So just kind of like send me a, hey, what's up, Lay? So if you have any questions or anything like that. But thank you all so much. Have a beautiful rest of your Wednesday. I'll see you again next week. As always, stay creative and stay happy. Bye, guys.